I was in preparations to create a section-by-section video. However, considering the original video is rather long, I will instead just submit a screenshot and vocalize on the matter. If you wish to watch the video fully, we can provide through DM. I am not quite sure I understand you not calling DID, and instead saying you understand it is a natural form of communication within oneself. I am unsure about DID being triggered by trauma perhaps you meant developed. I am going to need you to step back and take a moment to reevaluate upon the words you have just spoke next. By what do you mean DID is not a disorder or a disease, but rather God's natural design? Although I do agree DID does not fabricate one to be quote-unquote crazy. I am confused on the matter said previously, where you said it is not a disorder but rather God's natural design. When you look up DID or even say its full title, Dissociative Identity Disorder, the word disorder appears in its name. As well, if DID is not a disorder, then why is it such contrivance? Appear in the DSM-5, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. Why is there a need for a criteria to meet if DID is a natural occurrence? Why is it stated as a disorder by professionals, as well as Google itself? If all these contrivances are supposedly false in terms about DID being a disorder, then where is the evidence in which indicates DID is quote-unquote God's natural design? I would also like to touch base on your claim as being a natural design. When you speak of a disorder being quote-unquote God's natural design, you are telling your audience quote-unquote God intended for you to have a debilitating disorder in which repeated trauma from within childhood is a natural design. Are you vocalizing the fact you are born with DID? This kind of misinformation is harmful, as there are those with DID who have religious trauma and may have DID intentionally created through the usage of such trauma. When you speak about how parts are groupings of archetypes within each person, this indicates to me you believe anyone could quote-unquote develop these parts whether or not you meet the criteria of DID. Your word about parts being base function patterns, representation of the powers of archangels and archmans, is harmful misinformation. As said about you stating DID is quote-unquote God's natural design. Proclaiming parts are based on the powers of archangels and archmans can be dangerously harmful towards those who have religious trauma or still live in cults. While it is common for DID systems to have parts who form as angels or demons, they are not body-wise, nor do they outwardly possess any divine power. Now, for the audience viewing, what I am going to speak on next is a continuation of their talk about DID and spirituality from another media source. This, I will say, is the most triggering and dangerous, as there are indeed cues and hints of. In their other longer video, they more speak about how disorders are not disorders and how it all ties into spirituality. This video has mountains of religious trauma. I shall do my best to avoid all what I believe could potentially be cues, however. For safety of all, skip this video, however. If you wish to proceed, be certain you are with someone who recognizes your triggers and cues, have deprogrammed enough to where you are not cued, and are in a safe mind and physical setting. This is our warning. Do what you will. You cannot equate DID, a disorder in which stems from repeated childhood trauma, to quote-unquote spiritual psychosis. While it is true those with DID can indeed experience such psychosis, and I do agree having DID does not inherently make you malevolent, insane, etc., as big-name medias often portray disorders as, however. To say DID and spiritual psychosis are profound necessary parts of one's quote-unquote spiritual and general evolution is morally disgusting. I am without words to speak on the matter you just proclaimed about a debilitating disorder nobody desired to have. Speaking for my system, if we had a choice to not have DID versus to have DID, we would choose not to have it. Quoting, in order to talk to connect with divine entities and spirits you have to dissociate. Let us look into what the definition of dissociation means, shall we? Dissociation, mental process where a person disconnects from their thoughts, feelings, memories, or sense of identity. 5 types of dissociation include depersonalization, derealization, amnesia, identity confusion, and identity alteration. The types of dissociative disorders include dissociative amnesia, depersonalization disorder, and dissociative identity disorder. Dissociation as a whole scientifically does not equate to you having communication and connections to any quote-unquote divine being. Nor is dissociation a step into any kind of evolution. The cause of dissociation stems from mountains of stress from trauma. 2. Where the brain dissociates in order to try and protect itself. This has nothing to do with spirituality nor how to be spiritual. Where does it say dissociative identity disorder is no longer officially or legally considered its own disorder in the DSM-5? I would like to have sources produced and who made DID illegal. Apparently, I never knew dissociation is a natural symptom of heavy emotions. I thought dissociation was something the brain does to escape from the stress of trauma. The one other contrivance I do agree upon the long video is them speaking about how people have equated parts, alters, headmates, as quote-unquote multiple personalities. However, you cannot say parts are not personalities while also saying they are parts of a whole. Personalities shifted and rotated around within each part. In DID there is no primary personality trait as with DID. Due to repeated childhood trauma, the brain never got to form one cohesive mind, one personality before the ages of 6 to 9. What source can be provided to indicate parts, alters, headmates are representations of chemical and physiological, psycho-spiritual functions within each person? I shall end it here as they continue speaking more about spirituality and a plethora of religious trauma. Returning to the video from this app in which started this whole contrivance. Not once have you talked about how age regression can be formed within those with DID, and how even age play can be considered a traumatic factor in one developing DID. To give a short definition of age regression and age play. Age regression, when a person unintentionally begins thinking, feeling, or behaving as though they are at an earlier stage of life. Age regression can be used as a form of therapy, as a way to comfort oneself in terms of retreating when stress enters, etc. Age play, when you and a partner engage in intimacy in which one partner acts as a minor. Age play is often seen within adult communities, and since it involves two adults, it is not illegal. However, this does not indicate it is morally right. When combining DID with age play, this indicates a child could have been groomed, programmed, abused, etc. Within the abuse of age play. From within personal experience, another section of Ranko, TBMC, we have experienced was during our time being trafficked. Our handlers engaged in various types of adult quote-unquote entertainment, one of them being age play. Those of us who were forced to engage in such contrivance, we were either disabled, short, or had a younger-looking physique. Age play was implemented heavily into our minds and became a part of a type of programming as it included torture. Now I do agree with your comment about how one should be careful when they are an age regressor and engaging this kind of stress and trauma relief with another, that they are careful with who they engage with, as you stated a predator could take advantage of one's age regression to groom and shift them into age play, and that could cause damage to one's physical and psychological well-being as well as system if one has DID. However, you did not speak much about age play, age regression, and DID. Rather, you spoke about DID not being a disorder and instead being of something spiritual. As told before, proclaiming such contrivances is harmful and dangerous misinformation, as you could misguide, trigger, or even cue a plethora of people who are young cult survivors, have religious trauma, rancor, TBMC survivors, live in unsafe areas, etc. Now, I do not know your life story or history. I can only assume by the videos provided. From all I could gather and assume, you either deny the scientific basis of what DID is, or you have yet to deconstruct and heal from your own trauma. There is no more I will say, as there is no more to say.